It's the 28th of November 2025, a time of estrangement from my family, and it's been a horrific struggle every day, extreme pain, especially since my mother's vagueness and relaxed state in a case of this emergency has been going for 40 years. With all the medication I've had to take and all the counselling and everything else and all the screaming and crying and running away from home and being a missing person and living in the street and all the pain and suffering that I've experienced every single day waiting for my father to give a shit and give me closure, also known as debriefing after something massive happens, especially if your son has devoted his life to being in the darkness with you and then you don't care. When you recover, you're no longer in the darkness, you just leave him there. Little 6-year-old, then 7, then 8, then 9, all the way up to currently 48. My sister shoved me in there to make me do it. She was righteous, but then once I'd taken her pain away from her, she'd just dumped me. I wasn't actually in pain when my parents got separated. When I was 5, 6, it was... I didn't understand. And it was just... because we didn't move house immediately, right? Like, we were coming back home after we went on the trip to America with this other American dude who my mum left my dad for. I didn't really understand. He was fun. We went to Disneyland, everything, right? Until my sister pointed out that my father was really sad. Now, it could be that I showed not enough remorse at all, but my sister sort of enforced that I needed to be fully, not remorseful, in empathetic, to feel pain from the suffering, especially of my father who got abandoned. My mum was still looking after us. My dad was still looking after us. They didn't show me very many signs that there was something happening. It was just through the grapevine sort of thing. There were occasional times when I saw them throwing plates, but that was after I'd been told. Until then, they sort of very well kept it a secret. Mummy and Daddy were sleeping on different sides of the bed now, I heard. And then I saw my mummy move all the way down to the end of the hall and sleep in the office on a mattress in there. And we used to go between the 2 bedrooms because we loved Mummy and Daddy equally. It was when my sister said Daddy's never going to come in Honolulu that the wheels started turning in my head, that I needed to feel a lot sadder than I was, given the circumstances and how Daddy was feeling. Because you got to remember, me considering my sister crying, I saw her cry regularly. We always cried, all of us. I mean, not all of us, my sister and I, we were always crying. We were up, 5 me and 7 her, sort of thing. Because we didn't get our own way, because we were hungry and we didn't get good enough food, or somebody rushed off at the last second when they could have just stayed and we could have had some extra Smarties or something and nobody gave us anything. They gave us some things, obviously, but I'm just coming up with reasons why we would have complained. And then the fights between us about fairness, I think it was mostly about her misinterpreting me, and I'd get really angry. Or she was unfair. She's generally a very unfair person, as you can imagine, given what she's done to me. But I had to kind of pick my battles, didn't I? Otherwise I'd have nobody. You wouldn't expect an entire family to turn against the one victim, but that is exactly what happened. And I was shouting. I wasn't a quiet person. I shouted, I'm going to kill myself, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill everybody. That wasn't the only thing I said. I said, please don't hurt me, please stop hurting me, please stop this, it really hurts. I said a lot of that. But I got the feeling, as I got older and I didn't stop saying such things, they had no mercy. I'm pretty sure Christine had no mercy from the beginning. And she taught my dad to choose himself, because he showed some concern in the beginning. He just didn't really debrief me or get into any conversations that were deep enough for me to feel that he had totally come down to the darkness to get me out of there, and was willing to spend time rehabilitating me from the darkness to the surface, to the light. But it was never long enough. It was just quick little, how are you going? You feeling all right? All right, let's go. I needed way more than that. The casual, witty, playful father that I had decided to let me suffer the most horrendous pain a human being can experience on a daily basis since 1980, let's say, I don't know, mid-80s, when I realised he didn't care anymore. Could have been when I became a teenager. He certainly didn't care when he decided to just get married, despite that being my worst possible nightmare. He didn't debrief me about that one either. He tried to run me over in the car when he came to get me one time, which was good. I mean, I was good to see that he cared enough. You know, after not seeing me for 6 months, after I'd, threatened to jump out of the tallest tree in the area. I climbed at the tip and I was just precariously balancing there, ready to fall onto the cement below while the wedding was happening. And then, he did give me a little bit of a chase. I love you, or something. But that should have just been the beginning, right? The abandonment was like, it could easily have been that he just debriefed me and got me into the right mindset. I could have become part of the new understanding of what families are. One family's over here, the other family's over there. Instead, I was made to live in the hallway for, I don't know, a number of years. As I went through puberty, the hallway everyone passed through, storage hallway. And then when we finally moved to Hampton, when I was a teenager, after I'd sort of started seeing him again, I guess. I don't remember if it happened before the marriage. I'm pretty sure it did, actually. They probably moved there before I was, when I was 12 or something. And they got married shortly after. He kept on repeating that he was doing everything he did for me. And there's no doubt. I mean, the weird thing is my mum and Wayne lived over in the Bayside area, and my whole family had originally come from the eastern suburbs of Melbourne. And then he did move all the way over there. He bought a fairly expensive $391,000 house, and I think it was in 1990. Yeah, so I guess we didn't live there until then. And I guess my dad got married when, I don't know, 1991 or 2 or something. It wasn't the same year. But they never gave me a key to get into the house. I had to climb up the side pipe or wait for somebody else to be home, or the door was just left unlocked. Or I'd break around through the back side or whatever. Because Cameron and Chrissy, they had keys. They had bedrooms as well in the previous place as well, by the way. Christine had always described me as this awful child who dropped cake when she first met me. I'm sure that was, able to be taken either way with some level of affection. Just making fun of a little kid dropping cake. No big deal, right? It can't be the first thing you think about when you assess somebody, especially a 6-year-old. Anyway, she used it over and over, but it doesn't matter. It could have been good, nice-hearted, kind-hearted. It depends how I decided to take it. I mean, she was always ready to go either way, with evil or kindness. So I do, watching my father's concern and defense of me from her dry up, and he stopped defending me. That was the beginning of the end. It really shows. It was flowers in the attic type situation. The problem is, though, it's hard for anyone else to understand this sort of thing, because my sister and stepbrother had a fine time with each other and with them. I was a complete outcast. I mean, so much so that I'm pretty sure my stepbrother and sister still talk to each other. But my stepbrother had a baby about 6 months ago, and he hasn't allowed me to... Well, he didn't answer the phone a few times, and Very difficult. Then there was the lack of kindness from my father, as he showed me on the rare times I did to meet up with him or anything, that he really does not love me. It was just something my mother would keep denying over and over again. And made me keep holding on to hope. And then she kept on changing tactics and saying, well, don't hold on to hope, do something else or whatever. It wasn't as simple as that. She gave bad advice. Bad leader. She'd flip on a dime all the time, 180 degrees. So it's like unreliable. Yeah. And that was my leader. That's the person I've depended on my whole life. From love, just sprinkling rose petals onto me while I'm being smacked in the face with a fucking sledgehammer every day. Love. Useful. No, I think you got to roll up your sleeves after a certain point, after your child is being abused, and fucking stop the monster who's hurting him. I just wrote a little explanation of how somebody might understand this if they were writing policies for law. What needs to change? Well, obviously, people commit suicide and they kill other people, or they harm other people, they burn down properties, or all sorts of things because of retaliation, because of emotional abuse or mental abuse that has been put onto them by somebody who will get away with it. Now, if you torture your child, and I have devoted my entire life to my father, every single day I've lost relationships, had abortion, it's just non-stop destruction, sabotaging my own everything, sport, drama, school, relationships, friends, lost everything, lived in the street. My father kicked me into the street one time when he found a trace amount of red wine on the wall after I'd smashed a glass when they went home against the wall. Because I just basically confessed to it. And that sort of behaviour, it's like probably the worst thing I ever did, except when I got into fistcuffs with my dad twice, I think, in my whole life. Not that anyone ever got a bruise or anything. But yeah, he ended up hating me, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe his lack of gratitude for what I'd done. I'm still in the darkness now for him. And because it's locked into my brain, my neural paths are all keeping me locked in this cage down here. Paralysis, the destruction of my life. I'm grey now. I'm starting to go grey in the sideburns. So, I mean, this is how long it's taken, and he's just let me suffer the whole time. He'll die before he helps me. And my mother recently confessed that she didn't think it was a deliberate act for my dad and Christine to be that way. I was there, and when I was being released from handcuffs and lockup without a cigarette for about 3 or 4 days, and I'd written a story saying, if you don't fucking fix my life and apologise and feel remorse by the time I reach 35 years old, I'll kill myself. It's a little book that I wrote called The Little Puppy. I think it might have also been called The Loyal Puppy at one point. The dog kills himself in the end. It's a tragic story. Children's book. You should read it. He strangles himself to do with the chain that the bad guy, my father, had kept tightening around his neck. Or he'd kind of tightened around his own neck to sort of say, do you love me now, Dad? One of those things. So it's probably not uncommon that a father does not love their son, but I grew up knowing how deeply my father loved me, how much he cared. My entire life was devoted to him and Mum, and my sister to some extent, even though she's such a traitor. So if you're a parrot in a cage, you'll probably learn to talk, but if you're 2 parrots, you'll never learn to talk, because it's not good to keep one parrot in a cage so it goes nuts and has to learn English. Probably. Not probably. You've got to at least let them visit their friends or something. So this is my house cage thing Don't have a cage though. Have something big, maybe even the sky. But I accept that crows and things can eat parrots, so don't just chuck them out into the wild if they're not safe. Anyway, my conclusions were about justice. I think just registering that something is power abuse. It doesn't need to be physical assault, but you can, if you want, include physical assault with anything to do with the mental assault, because the mental part of you is inside your brain, which is part of your body. So if you're being abused there, it is physical assault, which also comes with the whole argument about self-defense. If you're being physically assaulted, you're allowed to physically assault back, right? So, I mean, how do you work that through that if, there are problems with domestic violence? She was hurting my emotional feelings, so I punched her in the face. There have to be limits. You can't just let that sort of thing happen. This is why you should say no violence, physical violence is allowed, but when there is emotional and mental violence, the law will take care of you. And they'll take into consideration the abuse, they'll look at all, right? Now, unfortunately, probably some people will be given a verdict they're not happy with, that the other person is innocent of causing extreme grief. And you might think, well, there would be too many cases if everybody whinged about every little thing. But you know that there are computers now, right? There are apps that can all link things up. I mean, you could pre-program. A lot of cases would be the same. You don't want the facts to be ignored, especially if there's nuance, right? And there's, indebtedness from provocation and side characters and all sorts of things like that. But it's not that difficult to put mathematical values on each offence and create a system. I mean, at the end of the day, we're letting people choose with their guts if it's a jury, or with their guts if it's a magistrate. That's just the way it works. There's nothing else. Somebody's just using their gut. Or they're saying, well, this penalty was given like this before, we'll just copy that. Like it's very primitive. What I'm suggesting, even though maths doesn't always apply directly, most people can say how much their foot hurts on a scale of 1 to 10. And this is basically what we're doing. We're giving general scores, just like anybody who's judging and diving. If you wanted to keep the jury system, right, they could just give their vote numbers. You don't need unanimous. You don't need it to be unanimous sort of thing anymore. It's a point system. Although you could have it unanimous if the scores weren't just added and divided, so it's an average, which is one way to do it. It's probably more fair if you do still require unanimous vote, or majority or something. Not just majority. I don't know. What's the thing now? Like unanimous? Really? Is that really how it always works? That'd be very slow. Anyway, you want fairness, but I don't know how much this discussion. There could be people who are better orators, right, in the jury group, or more cool and people want to follow them. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like that extra effort is going to give you more accuracy. Anyway, my father should be punished, and so should Christine, as a guardian. If I were to look at what other people get in terms of prison time, punishments for crimes of, like, causing grievous bodily harm or something like that, this would be in that category, but in the torture over 40 years category. So, if you've been torturing somebody in excess of 40 years, I think the crime should be the punishment should be a little bit bigger. Right? I'm thinking a fair figure would be maybe 80 years in solitary confinement. They'd be given food to survive, and a toilet, and a shower, and walls. I mean, I know from being locked up, it is torture to be confined. It is. And it is torture, not as much as confinement, to be lonely. Lonely can be heart-wrenching, but at least you can still feel like there's an escape outside yourself somewhere. Other people can fix this. if you are confined and the walls are not going to move and there's no way the door is going to open, that is torture, definitely. It is extreme torture. So my horrific struggle has been so bad, though, and my father has known this entire time how bad it's been. And he's just let me suffer. He's just left me to die for so long. Even though the whole reason I'm suffering is because I went into the darkness to make sure he wasn't alone. And my mother doesn't think that he's doing any of this deliberately. I mean, if this wasn't about semantics. This was about thousands of conversations I've had with her my whole life. And suddenly increasingly as well, she says that it's not malicious what they're doing. That's like driving through a kindergarten car park and just going over a few bumps, knowing they're children, but you were just going to drive out that driveway anyway, so whoever gets underfoot doesn't count. It's just, they're just in the way. So it's not your fault, apparently, for you driving over children. I don't know if that's a good enough example for you to accept as being a good comparison, but it's the indifference of being extremely cruel and knowing that somebody's life is destroyed because of your actions. A simple debriefing could have been 5 hours, and it would have clicked in my mind that everything was going to be okay because my dad was always going to be there to support me. But instead it was nothing, just small talk, witticisms, didn't want to feel uncomfortable by having a conversation about despair, maybe. It wasn't enough. Instead, my mother had to take all of that. I was screaming all the time in my pain, and she would be there to just not leave me alone with it. She felt guilty. Does this make her a saint? Well, it's a good start. It made me feel like I wasn't alone completely, that there was hope. But the problem is she taught me that this was always going to be hopeful, and it wasn't ever. She was basically keeping me in palliative care because she thought there was no hope, and she just tried to keep pretending that there was so I wouldn't kill myself. But then when I dig, I found out the truth about what she thinks, which is there's no crime here. It's just my mental illness or something, which I've been diagnosed, then undiagnosed from multiple, as they tried to figure out what causes me to feel so much pain. And I repeatedly told them, loyalty. Unrequited loyalty. Miss Havisham syndrome, I named it. Great expectations. Yeah. The reason I call it that is because she's waiting in her wedding dress every day for the groom who left her at the aisle, and he's never coming back. But she has to hold on hope so she remains sane, because the pain of realizing the truth openly to her own mind, which she's tried to keep bottled inside so that hope can swirl around that bottle of chaos that she's got tightly corked, but it's busting at the seams. She has to stop that from exploding. And then she can just put it away when he comes back, and they'll just finish their wedding and live happily ever after. That's the way I've been living. I first started with a double D size wedding dress, but I realised I didn't quite fill it out. So I had a few more donuts. No, it's nothing to do with a wedding dress. It's to do with waiting for something that's not going to happen. Or it could have happened. Anyway, I don't know why it's a syndrome. I just chucked that word in there. I also don't think it's what people call depression, which seems like a medical condition because of a deficiency of something that's happening in the brain's natural processes. No, this is not depression either. It is betrayal. It is. And I was probably a more sensitive little boy. I mean, this doesn't really help explain the sentimentality of it, but my father would take me swimming and I'd be splashing around. I'd be imagining amazing scenery, showing water slide tricks and doing. He wanted me to swim laps. He wanted me to play as well, I'm sure, but after a certain age, I think it was all about conformity. I was writing stories in my mind and telling them to him, but he was ignoring them, I think, and just continued to want me to swim back and forward laps instead. Now, I could have done that because I was clearly fit, did all sorts of things. But, I mean, he was happiest with me, I think, when I was succeeding at sport. But I think he loved me a lot in the beginning. I really do. I really think he loved me a lot. And I loved him just as much. It was palpable, the love, between all four of us, really. My sister and I were more casual on the love front, I think. But I always loved her. I defended her. I stood up for her. I remember grade prep, Mr. The Italian teacher. I can't remember his name anymore. I didn't have any problem with him. I was a first year student. My sister would have been in maybe grade 1 or 2. I can't remember the gap between us anymore. She didn't like him. I don't know why. So anyway, next time I saw this guy who I had no problem with, I started being mean to him. I remember the exact words, I think. It's like, I'll be naughty if you... I'll have to leave you use if you're naughty. He was Italian and said use plural. I remember that sentence. And I said, after nearly wetting myself with fear, well, leave us then. I remember the exact moment. I remember where I was sitting, how lit the room was by the sun. That's not very nice, he said. And then I went bright red and just curled into a Slater ball. This kind of thing I would do for my sister. Definitely wanted to be loyal from an early age. And that, I think, probably predates, it would predate the separation. So that's a good example of how I was before with loyalty. Loyalty was everything. Jesus was loyal. Luke Skywalker was loyal. Superman was loyal. All the heroes were loyal, right? Just had to, be good. It was the ultimate aim in life, almost. Not that I really knew what the full story was going to be for life. But just being righteous. I looked after everybody. And I was loyal to everybody. And I loved everybody on earth. And I saw we were about a millimeter away from a perfect existence based on the rainbows that my mother provided with every breath that she expelled from her beautiful soul. Unfortunately, when she tried to sit on the fence with the situation that was going on with my abuse, and still is going on, she fucked up. She let me suffer. I mean, have a good cry was well and good, She'd hold me in hours. My dad would originally tell me stories and things, but he never gave me proper closure about the breakup. My mum fully did. She was in the darkness with me every day. So whether it was closure for the breakup or come down in the darkness and get me, like I'm lost at the fair, don't just leave your son at Lost and Found and walk away from the fair and drive home, which is what he did. Fucking stop and look for your son who's lost. You don't do nothing. You don't just use witticisms when they're not having any effect. make a funny little joke midway through a burst of tears and think you fixed it. Ridiculous. Child services should have been involved with the complete lack of logic used by my father in order to help me deal with the separation. It was pretty much clap your hands together to get the dirt off and pick yourself up and move on. And he expected that from me. And he just basically told me how old I was. When I was crying, he'd tell me how old I was and say, it's ridiculous, I can't cry. Yeah, horrific. It's caused so much pain. And think of the description I'm giving to you, how minor and easy it would have been for him as a fully grown adult to talk to a little baby about why it's really kind of me to feel pain and go into the darkness and squint my eyes as hard as I could and squeeze my fists and tense every muscle in my body so I could maximize my ongoing physical pain as much as I was willing, along with the constant mantras in my mind that said I can't ever be happy and think of a list of all the things to be unhappy about. Despite everything my mother had taught me about Pollyanna's point of view, which was to be glad about everything. I've often made jokes about how glad she was with everything. And that makes me glad. Made fun because she did fall off the roof and end up in a wheelchair, Pollyanna. Don't forget. And then she was glad about what shiny wheels there were, and the blue sky, and the little birdies singing in the evening. Was very glad. But it's not reasonable for somebody with that perspective to easily be able to wash over onto somebody who's not very glad at all, namely me. I couldn't use Pollyanna's teachings, and Jesus' teachings of forgiveness was an interesting cop-out as far as I was concerned, even though I'd followed it for years and learned the word and forgiveness. And I just loved everybody in the beginning because I just trusted and thought everybody was kind and beautiful and like my mum, maybe, but they weren't. She was just one of a kind angel. Not one of a kind, maybe one of a billion, okay? Not many of those sort of willing to suffer the darkness. Although there are people who decide to have a career in social work, which makes me think maybe these people are all... Maybe I need a social worker to come and help me. I think I kind of do. Now that I feel like my mum's betrayed me, I've got no one to talk to. I just sit in a chair and lie in bed all day and never leave the house, ever. Or very rarely. And I'm so agoraphobic now. Oh, the pain, it's just been terrific. I just got to keep my mind occupied on... I've got to send out a grappling hook into the universe, and it has to snag onto something to pull me all the way out of this massive... lost decades of my life that I've fallen into. I see pictures of 21-year-old kids who are the children of the kids I went to school with, who were much younger than that last time I saw them. It is freakishly... I have spent years alone waiting for my friends who abandoned me. By the way, that happened as well. They didn't want to know about somebody who lived with pain. I spent years trying to figure out why they left, and I still was never given any closure from them either, or told why. I had some people give me a greasy look like I had done something. I don't remember ever doing anything to any of my friends except giving. So it was quite shocking. I thought, at least friends are forever. And I thought about what it'd be like when we grew up and had kids and lived, and our kids played together maybe one day. This was all very far in the future, of course, but I think they all did it. And their kids were raised together. And they're still doing it to this day, out in the sunshine, going, I live in darkness. I don't open the curtains. I order things delivered. And I don't see the light. And the light scares me. And people scare me. I've been betrayed so many times. And I never know what I've done. Maybe it's the way I talk. Apparently I've got a spitting, aggressive tone. But fuck, I live in immense pain. So, I'm so sorry to inconvenience you. Anyway, the answer truly is, for any future generations, any future people who go through what I'm going through, is that the people in charge of politics can pass bills pretty much once a week, I think, from what I understand. You just rock up, plead your case straight. I think it'd be easiest to get the lowest hanging fruit at the local government level. See what laws they can control. They've got probably a list, right? It'd be a catch-all net for the region of societies running that they're able to have any say over. I don't know, there are council bylaws and things like that. So this means it's just a local law that the council have made up for this area. Like, they can say, you're not allowed to smoke on this entire street, even out in public, which I think is probably a bit too, I don't agree with that, but they can pass laws like that. So they could be small beginner level, and then it could snowball upwards, up the chain, right? You might think, we'll just start at the beginning, go to the top, do a Greta Thunberg and get the world's attention. She's basically a protester, okay? And I'm a protester too, but I've never really considered it to be the main way to get things changed. I've seen evidence of laws passing and bad things stopping immediately. Protesting and trying to get public interest to grow something. If you can just be charming enough to walk in to one of the open days where the public can come and visit the council chamber meeting, I'm pretty sure that's open every time. I think they're supposed to be representatives of the people, and as a people person, well, I'm not a people person, but I'm a person of people, so I could go in there and basically, having written on a Friday evening something on a form that I want them to discuss on the Monday meeting, turn up on the Monday meeting and they have to read it, if they've got time, or maybe it'll be read on a Tuesday or something. But it could be read, and when they read it, I think you can put yourself at a podium and plead why you think this is an important issue. I'm pretty sure. And if they film it and stuff like that, then that could get some kind of interest showing what's being... that sort of thing could even end up in the media, because, it's a new... what I've spoken about and what I've written about recently, just today or yesterday, I can't tell what days flow together anymore because I'm fucked. They're filming you giving your say about what needs to change in society. You can go in there ignorant of what the local government's able to change, but if they're not patient people, they'll just talk over you and say, we don't deal with that stuff, and not let you finish. But what you want to do is get that entire speech out, which would be a nationwide solution. And you'd want it filmed and you'd want it on the news. And then hopefully it'll be picked up, and you try to use tactics to get press releases and keep going with the fight to each council. And you just don't stop going to councils, because there are a lot of councils to go to, right? Now, I don't know what the deal is. Do you have to live in the area to be able to speak? What's the deal? I don't know what the limit is. You'd go to every council. You'd see what every single person's reaction like, right? With my case, I think that, the physical violence is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to violence. And I think most violence is, or most abuse is mental. Now you might think, why? You can't just people whinge about every little thing and have people go to jail because of it. No, but there could be little micro compensations that could be given just through apps and stuff. Like, for example, just make it simple. Just make it simple. The thing is, you're basically handcuffing anybody you accuse to a bloody chair or something, so they can't leave the country. And you could do that. But if you do that dishonestly, you then get punished, I think. That would make people stop and think about whether or not they want to fuck themselves up when trying to accuse somebody who's not done anything. Or you could say it's a fairly severe punishment if you do, not severe as in corporal or anything, just you're not allowed to make a false accusation. If you get found doing that, you're in big trouble. Let's just put it that way. That would keep people at bay. Don't expect people to do things out of kindness. It just doesn't work. You can with everyday people you're friends with, or family. Not family, obviously. But yeah, when it comes to protecting societies, you've got to make it law, and it has to be enforceable by violence, like we have now. Men with guns and cages and handcuffs. I see no way around a police force in this world. But what I do see an improvement for, and a need for less severe crimes to happen, is prevent major crimes by appeasing everybody for unfairness before big resentments can grow and revenge is sought, or pain is so ongoing in the mind of the person who's a victim because they never get closure, which I think is the key to nearly everything. I mean, unless something was a deliberate malicious act, and but the word closure, debriefing, or whatever else, can include justice. Often it's not needed. Often with smaller things, you just want somebody to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize you were standing there when I fucking drove over your foot with a lawnmower," right? Or in my dad's case, "I'm sorry for smashing you in the head with a sledgehammer every day for the last 40 years. I didn't care to stop and look at what my hands were doing." Anyway, a complete defense system for people who are wronged through mental anguish, through mental abuse, emotional abuse. It doesn't have to be emotional, it can be mental, because the emotion is not something that could be written or measured. It can be measured per person, but it's not really the main concern. It is the concern, because pain is emotional. Like, mental abuse is emotionally painful, right? So we're looking at the mental abuse that caused the emotional pain. We're not making a specific law for each injury. It's the power abuse level that we're concerned with. Because, and the other thing is, power abuse bounces back and forth like a game of tennis between two people, obviously. And if there are multiple people involved, then that's other things to consider. In fact, I wouldn't have court cases just one person, one-on-one. I'd go, all right, who are all the parties involved? They're all now on trial. So, for example, if there was somebody who complained that they were being abused loudly and threatening to kill people, that's understandable given the circumstances of ongoing daily abuse and the complete abandonment of somebody who didn't give a fuck about their son. Or gave too small a fuck. How's that? Way too small. Witticisms was the answer, the only effort. Yeah. Some small, occasional, oh God, all right, what do you want? Occasionally. Enough time to stop and hear a sentence that was stammering out of my, shaky lips as I cried my desires of closure or caring in general. I probably wasn't able to articulate in short enough sentences in those days exactly what I thought was fair, but I think it would have been very clear. And I think even any father with a pen and paper would go, all right, he complained about this, this, and this, and this, and this. All arrows lead to, he needs me to give him closure. It's not hard. And it's obvious for anyone who's an adult that closure is mandatory. I would say there should be strong penalties for people who refuse to give closure. You've got to take into account provocation and circumstance as well. So, for example, if there's somebody who's a celebrity, for example, and they're being constantly given kind words and all these sort of things, right? And people stand in their way and take photos and just ask for a signature and all this sort of stuff. And these people are just sick of the lack of privacy and being bombarded and not being left alone. And you might say they deserve it for being celebrities. I don't think they do. I think there need to be protections for them, right? So they're shoving people out of their way who say, I love you, right? And you're shoving them in the face, right? Get the fuck out of my way, you rodent, okay? Now, I think that celebrity kind of needs to be let off the hook, given the provocation. Do you understand what I'm saying? You could talk about offense, but like that one of those people in the crowd, if you think about the Stan music video from Eminem, right, they could feel hard done by enough to fucking go off and feel, angry and want revenge and all sorts of things like that. And you would think you're kind of describing me if you saw that. A fan, somebody who obsessed over one person for their whole life. That was me with my father, right? But this is a different situation, right? He raised me with love, and then he pulled that love away. If there wasn't any in the beginning, I wouldn't have a problem. It's the loss. It's the betrayal. And people might be like, well, people have lots of relationships in their lifetime. Your father's just one of them. And I haven't let that be the case. I just haven't allowed it to be the case. And I'm not sure that I even could if I wanted to, because it was all ingrained by my sister into my brain growing up in those formative years where my neural pathways were as supple as possible. And I held on to the one line of thinking every day with mantras and self-harm all the time. Just perpetual self-harm every day, never allowing myself to feel happy or, and the more my father didn't care, the more I would add to that as a secondary part of the story. Because I was just using the same tactic again, foolishly, to hurt myself, self-harm, to get attention. I guess it's pretty obvious to see what reaction I wanted if you see somebody crying, a little kid crying and crying and crying, and please, please, please stop hurting me, please stop hurting me. Well, I think they want you to stop hurting them. And also, fucking not just not hurt them, fix it. It's your kid, fix it. Fix the fucking problem in their mind. And for a grown-up, it's not fucking hard. I was getting all the love and reassurances from my mom, right? That's 50% of my soul. Even to this day, I feel that. I know souls are probably just a bunch of bullshit we made up, but she's 50% of my soul. My father is the other 50%. So I just couldn't. And all she had to do was convince him. And because he was hurting me so much, I thought she was definitely going to stand up for me and convince him to stop hurting me, to give me debriefing, to give me closure, to show me, to introduce me to the world in a new life and raise me. Don't just tell me how old I am or what I should already know by this age. Actually raise me. Give me a key to the front door of the house I'm supposed to live in, right? I know I said it wasn't home, right? Nothing was home. Nothing was home after the age of... I've never been home since 5 years old. I've been, in agony, just waiting for my father to fucking come to the lost and found and rescue me.